Hey guys, Dark Humility here. You can always catch me at twitch.tv/Dark Humility for 6 to 7 days a week of Diablo II action, PD2, D2R, and more. We keep all of our guides here on YouTube, both PD2 and D2R, and on Maxroll, where we have the most definitive Diablo 2 info around for Diablo 2 Resurrected. Today, we have the first guide of Season 6. This is a guide and not a playthrough, which we upload after the beta. This is a full guide with full info, skills, stats, gear, and demos, which we will do in that order. This is on the live server, Hardcore Ladder. This will be done with a hardcore character, so of course the default gear will be hardcore. However, of course, we'll go over all of the relevant setups for both hardcore and softcore, and do plan on doing so. So, without further ado, let's get into the throes of the Warcry Barbarian. The Warcry Barbarian is indeed an S tier monster, one of the most effective mapping builds in the game, not just for hardcore but also for softcore. For hardcore, maybe even more so, given just how tanky you can make this character and how effective you can make him at absolutely destroying and smashing demons. Of course, we'll demo him in all of the maps as well, so you guys can see that to the best of your ability. We will post timestamps below on all the relevant sections, so you guys can view whichever section you're most interested in, or sections, in case there's more you want to learn about the Warcry Barbarian. So, without further ado, let's get into one of my favorite builds, and one of my favorite builds of Season 6, where I've committed to playing some of the top Barbarian builds, and also possibly a Druid build very shortly. So, let's get into this level 96 Barbarian here. Strength, you only need enough strength to wear all of your gear, since you have both Enigma, or at least Enigma on this build, but in this case Enigma and Storm Shield. You're going to want to put in enough strength to where the strength on these items are enough to wear themselves. So you can strength bug these items by putting on other items with strength, such as rings that I already have here, and then maybe a strength amulet or strength gloves, or similar items of that nature. And so you can indeed make sure that he has enough strength to wear all of his gear no matter what. As you can see here on the offhand, we have some items that require even more strength for maximum bow. You'll want to make sure that, of course, you have enough strength to wear these. Of course, as you may notice, I put hell runes in here so that you can wear them more easily. Alright, and so Dex is for maximum block. This is definitely a hardcore move. This build does not need maximum block. As a matter of fact, on softcore most of the time, I would advise not even using a shield at all unless you're going to 99, in which you really want to make sure you don't die. But in most scenarios when you're mapping with a Warcry Barb, you probably just want to put all of your points into Vitality and just get an absurd amount of HP, and which can be stacked with items and runes such as jaw runes. However, for hardcore, getting max block is a very good idea. It is not the only way to survive on hardcore, but it is the most certain way, and it's the most safe way to do so overall. Alright, and of course you just want to make sure to max out your res. On hardcore, we have ultra stacked res on this build because you're literally jumping right into the middle of enemies. This is the reason why this character is even more tanky than most of my hardcore builds, because you will be jumping directly into the fray. That includes in the most dangerous, most dangerous maps and the most dangerous of scenarios overall. Okay, and then we have So as you can see, they're stacked well above 75, meaning conviction won't affect us with cold or lightning res. For fire, it will a little bit. Can definitely still shore that up with even more res. It's definitely possible. Of course, the damage reduction we have is 40%. The Mercenary will bring us up to 50%. So as you can see here, if we use Battle Command on him, combined with his Defiance Aura, we are hitting 50% damage reduction, which is extremely good. That is the maximum damage reduction value you can get without being amplified, which means with Amplify we are at 0, which means we're not even going into the negatives with Amplify damage, which means we are insanely tanky, especially considering how much life we have here. Very good stuff. And then, of course, we have 105 faster cast rate. 105 faster cast rate. Is the breakpoint in general you want to shoot for on most versions of this build. However, there are very easy ways to get 200 FCR, especially if you're not going with a shield, and we will talk about those once we get to the gear options that are available for both hardcore and softcore here, as we always do. Despite my playing hardcore, I definitely make sure that the softcore build is well understood and that some of the most effective damage approaches are utilized. And of course, we have faster hit recovery. Faster hit recovery on this build is probably not very important. You have really high defense. In my case, I have max block. If you don't have max block, faster hit recovery is definitely more important. However, you're also stunning the monsters by constantly putting them into hit recovery with Warcry when you jump into them. So usually it would just be ranged monsters outside of the range of Warcry that would even have the chance of putting you into hit recovery anyway. And with so much life, it also takes a lot of damage to put you in a hit recovery. That being said, though, it is very possible to be put in a hit recovery, especially with a lot of auras and amp and things of that nature. And so you're probably going to want to get hit recovery. One thing to note here is that hit recovery is indeed not probably required or needed as much. Let's say if you go also curse immunity and decide to have 100% reduced curse duration on your gear. And that's because you won't get amplified damage, and then also will reduce the likelihood of being put into hit recovery. So hit recovery is not very important on this build, period. But I do like getting the 27 frame just in case you are put into hit recovery. It's not a terrible idea. Most of the time, if you have a shield, you'll be relying on block rate. And that's even if you do get hit with as much defense as you have and the stun that you have. So in general, it's always good to have some backup so that your hit recovery speed isn't insanely slow and you end up getting trapped in a bunch of monsters. Alright, and then of course we have Magic Find here. That Magic Find is pretty solid before entering a map, but let's say you're going to want to run Trav. There's definitely a lot of other gear options that you can look into, which we'll be going over as well. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the stats. You're going to want to go for 105 cast rate or 200. 63 isn't bad, but you're not putting the monsters into hit recovery very effectively at 63. If that's all you can do, though, then that is indeed all you can do. Looks like someone's asking to trade me. Interesting. Alright, so yeah, as you can see, we are on the live server. So what's interesting about this Barb, actually before we do that, let's just go into the skills, and then we'll talk about what's kind of interesting about his gear, what's interesting about our journey we went through since the start of Season 6 here on Hardcore, and we could talk about exactly how he operates. But anyway, you're going to want 1 point into Leap. You're going to want to wear Enigma no matter what for Teleport, but Leap has to be used in between Teleport because you will run out of charges if you only use Teleport, especially if you're strong enough to kill the monsters almost instantly upon leaping or teleporting on top of them. So you're going to definitely need leap in addition to teleport. My helm is actually granting me leap, so in this case I don't actually need that. I put 2 points in an iron skin just to get 1% extra damage reduction so that I could hit 50%, which is maximum, which is kind of cool. I'd say most of the time you probably just need to put 1 though. And in the rest of these skills, you just put 1 as well. You're going to want natural res for sure, so you can stack your res up. Going to make things a lot easier. You're going to put 1 to increase speed as well, so you can run faster through town. And the 1 into iron skin is helpful as well. These are all 1-point wonders. Since you are not using a weapon to attack, Warcry is a caster physical skill, which means damage modifiers like Deadly Strike and Crushing Blow do not work on it. But it also means it always hits, and there's no crit strike either, and there's no weapon involved, so there's no masteries you're going to want to get on this build. Instead, you're going to want to max out Warcry, which is going to be your primary skill, and you're going to want to max out Battle Command no matter what. Battle Command will give you +3 skills, so it's like getting a free +3 skills. And skills and FCR are the main sources of your damage on this build, and negative enemy physical res. So you're going to want to do that. Warcry, as you can see, Battle Command is also a synergy, so that's really good. Since they've nerfed the synergies for Howl and Battlecry, it also doesn't... You don't take as much of a hit by leveling up Battle Command first, for instance, as opposed to those other abilities. And so comparatively, Battle Command becomes even more important with those bonus 3 skills. On Hardcore, since Battle Orders is also a synergy, it's probably a good idea to prioritize Battle Orders. Don't necessarily have to prioritize it all the way, it's kind of up to you. But if you want to avoid dying, it's definitely a good way to do it. Battle Cry is definitely the other thing you're 100% going to want to max out, even from a fairly low level. So Battle Cry here, physical damage resistance, 37%. Yeah, so that negative enemy physical res is going to be huge, and typically you're going to want to cast this before casting Warcry. In most situations. When you become powerful enough in a tier 1 map, or if you just are using Brimstone, Rain, or Soul Drainers on your gear, you'll have enough negative physical res to not even have to cast this in a lot of cases, but this will massively increase your damage. So this is also, of course, one of the 15% synergies as well. So no matter what, you're going to want to max out these two. Maxing out this is a good idea. And then, of course, Howl, which is the other 15% synergy, should also be maxed out at some point. Of course, if you're not maxing out all these, and especially if you're running Travincal, which is his best LOD area, you're going to want to max out Find Item. Well, not max it out, but you're going to want to get enough points into Find Item, usually via your skills. So you're going to want to put 1 point into Find Item. Your soft points on your skills will allow you to reach a very high percent chance to use Find Item and to hork an additional item from elite monsters and council members and things of that nature. And once you get all those soft points in there, if you have a lot of soft points, what ends up happening is the percent chance gets high enough to where if you put additional points into there, it'll only like increase 1% or not even. And so then it'll become more effective to put hard points into Find Potion instead, so that you can find items effectively. So, yeah, you're going to want to put hard points into Find Potion. You put 1 point into Find Item. Let the soft points carry Find Item, as long as you have enough of them. And then, if not, you might want to level this up a few times, put a few hard points in there, and then just put some remaining points into Find Potion, and then get north of about 50% Find Item. That's usually the goal. You can even get higher than 60 even higher than that if you're using heart carvers on your swap, which give up to 7 to find item, which is really cool. And so, once again, you can get a lot of soft points into find item in almost any barbarian build, enough to where if you put hard points into this, you can get some really high chance to get an additional item. And combined with a lot of magic find or gold find in the case of Travincal, you can get very rich using that method. This build doesn't even have find item at all because it is a Warcry mapping build with a ton of damage, and so what our main goal here is just smash the map as fast as possible. And of course, find item will slow you down in service of that goal. So we need as many synergies for Warcry as possible, and we're just trying to max out our damage. Alright, so let's go over here. The Mercenary build. Mercenary build is Defiance or a Mercenary. That is for the extra defense it provides you on top of Shout, which makes it really hard for monsters to hit you, on top of the damage reduction. The best weapon on this build is unquestionably a Reaper's Toll. However, if you're horking Trav, you're probably going to want to stick to something like Obedience or like Insight so that you don't have cold damage. So you see that cold adds cold damage. That's very bad for find item, because if your mercenary attacks the council members, it will freeze them, and that will create a chance that the monster will explode into ice shards and the body will not be horkable. So you're going to want to use Insight or something similar instead. It gives the merc a lot of damage. Breath of the Dying is even more insane if you can do that. And then you're not dealing cold damage anywhere on your body. However, for mapping, there's nothing better than a Reaper's Toll, as this provides amplified damage, which is negative enemy Phys Res. And negative enemy Phys Res is very, very important stuff. Once again, that is a huge source of your damage. Alright, and then of course we have Vampire Gaze here. This is just damage reduction, attack speed, life leech. You do want life leech somewhere on your build no matter what. Usually Reaper's Toll will give it to you though, so that's not a problem. As you can see with this is a very insane version of Reaper's Toll. You don't necessarily need one this good. But the main key is to have the amplified damage, and then in addition to having attack speed on the rest of your build. That and damage reduction, defense, and resistances will keep your mercenary alive. Having your mercenary also have a lot of crushing blow and deadly strike is good, and just a lot of damage in general is good, which is why we're wearing Fortitude. Because you're going to be teleporting directly on top of the monsters, bringing your mercenary with you, and the mercenary actually is a fairly significant damage source on this build, particularly against bosses. And this is also something that you can utilize. Your mercenary can even help you kill things like Uber Ancients as well. We will not be demoing that, however, that is something you can definitely do. It's difficult to keep your merc alive sometimes in those scenarios, but you can definitely do it. Especially if you have like max light res, you can survive Madoc fairly well. But in general, these are all good stats. MF is good because you'll be killing a lot of monsters, and of course, make sure we have more resistance, more attack speed. We're actually hitting the 142 attack speed breakpoint with a Thresher on this character, which means he's attacking as fast as possible, which means that his amplified damage on striking is proccing literally as often as it possibly can. And that's really the goal on this mercenary. It's the big goal, and then keeping him alive. Alright. And so, before we get into his gear, let's kind of explain the journey of this build just a little bit. So we happened to... we had a good time here this ladder, basically starting out totally solo self-found. We started out with Frenzy. We frenzied Nightmare Cows, and we worked our way up to being able to push through Hell, except through Hell Ancients. And then we just started farming Travincal with a really primitive Mercenary Warcry build. And basically what we had on the Mercenary are things like Dark Glow, Inferno Stride to boost his maximum fire res and also the rest of his res. And we also used an Insight, not even one this good, but we had like just a elite non-eth one. What's interesting is that non-eth items aren't significantly worse than eth items in PD2 because they reduce the difference between the two. So even like a non-eth Cryptic Axe, which we used, was very effective. And stacking his res also, we also stacked his fire res a lot with the same laying of hands here. Got his attack speed up as well. And the Mercenary was able to destroy with a max level battle cry. And even with a Warcry as weak as like 1.5 to 2k damage. And all we had is like double spirit. We found IK Helm pretty quickly. And eventually we even found this on day 3, which was insane. But even without this, we were able to kill Trav very effectively just by lowering their physical res so much, letting the Mercenary mostly tank it, using a Nausea's Staff for teleport or a teleport staff, just a regular one that you can buy from Ormus as soon as level 23 to do it. Now in hardcore, it's a little dangerous to do that, so you gotta make sure you don't, teleport directly to the middle of the council members, especially when you're amped or they have auras, so you just have to be careful with your positioning. But overall, as long as the Mercenary's got life leech and all that stacked res, and he's got a decent amount of damage, he was able to survive very consistently. And once we got enough fire res to where conviction couldn't affect him, he was almost invincible in there, and could kill the monsters for us. And then at that point, our goal is just to stack Magic Find or Gold Find if we wanted to focus on gambling or making a lot of wealth through selling these mapping orbs, which are very expensive from Anya in terms of gold. And you can definitely trade a lot of those. Now, I didn't trade any orbs, but that's definitely a very effective way to do it. We did buy a lot of the orbs, of course, for own mapping, and we also did a lot of gambling, a lot of +3 amulets, and a lot of other items as well, like awesome rings. That's a very effective way to get things like 20 FCR rings, and even possibly +4 amulets, or just really good +3 amulets, and just really good +2 amulets in general. And Travincal is like one of the best places to get jewelry. So throughout our journey, we were very effective at gathering items. We were able to get Hodo, just farming Trav. We found this Cham rune here that's in the helmet. We got double Hodo eventually, and just made sure to maintain that 105 FCR. And we were just getting stronger and stronger to the point where the Mercenary wasn't even the strongest source of damage, but our Warcry was. And by the time we finished Trav, we were rich enough to trade for a mapping build, and we stopped our solo self-found journey and ended up with some really insane gear at some point, which we can now show off now. So let's show off this build's gear. Now remember, keep in mind this is a hardcore Warcry Barbarian, but of course we'll be going over weapon options. So there's a lot of different weapon options on this character. Your best options are things like double Hodo, the plus skills and the 60 cast rate and the all res, and even the Oak Sage to get more additional life, and even the mana, all extremely helpful stats. Other very helpful items, even on your main hand for using for damage, would be things like Grandfathers. 5 to Warcries is no joke. As a matter of fact, this season you can get up to 20 faster cast rate on weapons as a corruption. This is not an item I've been able to find yet in hardcore. It's pretty difficult to find things of that caliber sometimes. Sometimes you really gotta look, or just hope that someone corrupts one, especially given how rare Grandfather is. It's not easy. If we can get a 5 Warcry Grandfather with 20 faster cast rate, maybe puzzle box it for 3 or 4 sockets, we'll have an extremely good weapon on our hands. And of course, you could even use 2 of them if you're not using a shield, just like the Hodos. And those could be your main weapons, and you could have a lot of faster cast rate, and you could have even more insane amounts of damage. Of course, you can also put things like Sur Runes in them for mana per kill, life per kill, and sustain better as well. So there's a lot of really good options for weapons. Another very prominent option, which I personally like, because in a lot of cases you can just destroy monsters even without first casting Battlecry, would be Brimstone Rain. And that's because Brimstone Rain has a ton of cast rate, has a decent amount of plus skills, and it'll give you up to -15 enemy Fizz res off the bat. So Brimstone Rain, double Hodo, and double Grandfather are all the most prominent softcore options. For hardcore, you can go one Grandfather and one Hodo. Of course, you can also still do something like two Grandfathers in hardcore, but you're gonna have to get, you're gonna definitely have to get the curse duration reduction probably on hardcore. I don't trust no shield on hardcore when you jump in the middle of monsters, when archers can probably just gun you down if you're able to get cursed. So you want to make sure you probably don't get cursed if you do that approach, including if you're going for 200 faster cast rate, which can lower your base damage but increase your overall DPS in some cases. One thing to keep in mind though is that some of these weapon choices, or even going for 200 FCR, might have a weakness in that you're still kind of limited by your teleport charges and your leap speed. So to some extent, it's not quite as sorcerous in terms of just like more FCR, more DPS. It's not quite that simple. So getting just a high amount of damage and a high amount of negative Fizz res is really maybe oftentimes the most solid approach, especially on hardcore, because if you're going for max curse duration reduction, you might have to use like Crown of Ages, and you really might have to nuke a lot of your plus skills. So there is a lot of a give and take there, and with Geeter, there's definitely a lot of different choices. When it comes to mapping, there's nothing that's more best in slot than Enigma. For Travincal, I used Wealth in the beginning. Very simple, just Lemco tier, tons of gold find, 100% magic find. I never even found Scolders even once this season. Solo Soul found, or even after I got my gear and mapping. So, but Scolders is also an amazing choice. A lot of really good choices if you're doing just Travincal or otherwise. But for mapping, Enigma is unmatched. You really want the teleport that teleports the Mercenary with you. And that's really a key here, because the Mercenary provides the amplify damage. If he teleports with you, then he procs the amp immediately and you crush the monsters. With a combination of both amp and battle cry, the monsters just get absolutely flattened, no matter how much health they have or how strong they are. And it can even effectively destroy fortified maps. So that is definitely something to take into account here. Okay, so you're definitely going to want to take a look at that, and that's definitely something you're going to want to do. But at any rate, we might even demo some Fortified as well, just to show you guys that he's very capable of dealing with that. As a matter of fact, because of like the limited AoE, in some cases you can argue Fortified might actually be pretty solid. However, he also deals with insanely large amounts of density extremely well too, so he can kind of do either one. At any rate, so you have Enigma here. Of course, Fortified maps, if you guys don't know what those are in Season 6, that's a way to make the maps a lot harder and stronger with less density, but with like double loot and double experience, so that's really cool. Alright, and of course, we have a lot of that there, and so yeah, you just really want that teleport. And of course, the other stats on Enigma are also extremely helpful, including the plus skills. The strength, which bugs itself on and provides strength for Storm Shield. So overall, at least in this case of this build, is very solid, even more so. But on any version of this build, Enigma is probably going to be your best in slot. Really want to be able to bring that Merc with you and absolutely smash the monsters in the vicinity. Alright, now helms, there's a lot of choices for helms. You don't need anything this fancy. So this is a bricked IK helm. So I found an IK helm in Travincal, day 3. This is when I was still solo self-found. I was only using gear that I found. And I bricked an IK helm. It made this, I puzzle pieced it for 2 sockets. And eventually, of course, I found a Cham in Travincal and put it in there as well. Originally, I think this one just had like 2 perfect topazes, and we were using cannot be frozen boots. I think we are just using like rite of passage or something. But this was, yeah, this is an insane item for sure. This is free leap, so I save 3 skill points with that. I get 5 skills, and I get my cannot be frozen, and I even have another socket to put in whatever I want, like a jaw or an ist, depending on if I want to be tanky or have more MF. Corruption wasn't very impressive on it. The actual corruption it got when it bricked, because you get a free corruption now on a bricked item. That being said, it honestly didn't need it. So it's actually kind of crazy how even in season 5, even without that corruption there, this brick would have been pretty insane. Heck, even for double throw, this helm would have been insane. I never used it for that, but yeah, it's got 5 double throw. It even has AR minimum damage as well. So this helm is kind of nutty. Also looks really cool as well. Definitely look like a boss at this. If for some reason we end up mirroring it, we can make it a really cool color maybe at some point, just for fun. I don't know if that's really worth a mirror. You can argue one way or the other, but it's pretty sick, so maybe it is. At any rate, amulets, there's definitely a lot of different options for amulets. However, yeah, we've definitely found this kind of early on. We had like Barb, MF, Amulet. In general, Barb skills, FCR, those are going to be your best bets. This is best in slot in terms of number of plus skills. So this is just a damage reinforcing amulet, which is really, really good. Definitely going to feel those damage increases, especially with as fast as you cast Warcry. You feel small damage increases quite a bit, actually. Especially with all the negative enemy res you have as well between Battlecry and Amp, so getting plus skills is very, very nice. One thing I should note with the helm, of course, as well as, in addition to the amulet, you could use simple things like Mars as well, +3 Warcry amulets. Those are all going to be solid. For the helm, the IK helm was a very good starter. Very, very good indeed. You can eventually make a 5 Warcry Delirium pretty easily. A 3-socketed Warcry helm can work pretty well. Delirium, of course, is never going to be quite as good as this, but definitely gets you to that damage level, which is really nice. Even gives you the MF for good measure. That this one also has. No cannot be frozen though, no free leap points, but hey, I mean, it does pretty much everything else. And then, of course, you can even get up to 6 skills with a blue helm. That is definitely possible. So it's even possible to get more damage. Another very nice helm would be Halbert's Rain. Halbert's Rain will give you a lot of points at a battle cry for negative res. It'll give you 2 skills for the main skill, which is Warcry. And it'll also give you a lot of damage reduction. Damage reduction would be very good for hardcore. If you're going Curse immunity, most of the time you're probably going to have to go Crown of Ages, though, which you can definitely get a plus skill on that with the corruption, but it's definitely going to hurt your damage a bit, at least your raw damage. But it will make going 200 FCR feel a lot better if you do happen to go for that approach. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, so this is something that's totally optional, but if you are using a shield on this character, your best options are to make yourself really tanky. You really counter that sustain and making it to where when monsters hit you, you just don't feel it very much, which is good, so you're not constantly downing potions. Believe it or not, a really tanky approach feels even good on softcore because you're just not taking damage very often. Or not a lot of it, which is really good. So you're minimizing your potion use and otherwise. Your 2 best options for a shield period, though, would be Spirit Ward or Storm Shield. Those are the shields that are going to give you a lot of defense, a lot of block. Yeah, the block rate. Spirit Ward has res and DR. Storm Shield has the insane amount of DR. And Spirit Ward can give you +2 skills. So that's really nice. +2 Barbarian skills as long as you get a Barb Spirit Ward. I just ended up going for 50% DR because it feels really good, especially in high physical damage maps. So yeah, these are definitely things you're definitely going to want to look into there. And it just feels really good in general. Alright, so this is if you're going a shield. We already talked about various weapon combinations if you're going 2 weapons and otherwise. So I think we're good there. For bow or just for pre-buff, you can use grandfathers. What I used most of the time when I was using find item though was 2 blades of Alibaba and just stack your gold find or magic find. In my case, I went magic find a lot more heavier on the magic find, but you can definitely stack lem runes for gold find and then have an absurd amount of gold find as well. So I definitely went for the pushing 600 magic find on a Hork approach, which was very effective actually for finding all kinds of extremely good items on Hork, like Maras and all kinds of cool stuff. Okay. And so then, in order to get 105 FCR in my particular build, with a shield and whatnot, made sure to get an FCR Occultist. FCR Occultist is very hard to get, especially on hardcore. This is definitely a difficult one. I'm surprised I was able to find one, honestly. With the reduced curse duration, it's also good because there's fewer windows when you're taking even more damage. Don't have max curse duration reduction on this build, but this would be mandatory if you were going max curse duration. Occultist and Crown of Ages are pretty much the combo that really make that easy to do. You don't necessarily need Crown of Ages. There's other ways to get max curse duration on top of this, but you would need it on pretty much every other piece of gear, which would be hard to do, especially with Enigma and other things that maybe can't roll curse duration reduction. So in general, this is actually probably going to be your best approach overall, especially if you want to get enough plus skills elsewhere. And so we have 30% faster cast rate, and we have a lot of mana too, which is great, and of course curse duration reduction. In terms of FCR gloves and in terms of hitting or breakpoints, I don't really think there's a better option than a cultist on this build. But you know, things like train gloves and mage fist, which I use temporarily, also work very well. One thing I should note about the storm shield is that it has block rate corruption, and block rate corruption allows us to hit the 48 breakpoint or the 42 breakpoint. I think it is for the Barbarian. I think it's 42, and all I know is that it does hit another breakpoint, so 35 isn't quite enough. That'll hit 27. And then I believe that with you could put a shale in the storm shield to get block rate, but you want the block rate somewhere. In my case, I got block rate here. I didn't get lucky on the puzzle box on it, so it only has 1 socket, but it has max DR. So max DR, 1 socket with block rate is really solid. It's basically like a 2-socketed storm shield with 30 DR to some degree because it's basically a free shale rune. And that block rate is really nice. If you're going max block, I recommend hitting at least that 42 breakpoint there. It will make a pretty big difference, and you will indeed be able to hit that without any issue. All right, so what we have here is we got our block rate. It's really good. It's really good for responding. Remember, you're not going to be putting a hit recovery most of the time. You'll be putting a block recovery. So recovering faster means you're able to do damage more fluidly and able to just use things in general. This would be the same for like any kind of Nova character. If you're going block, you really want to make sure you have a lot of faster block rate. I've said the same in the Poison Nova Necromancer video as well from a previous season, and the same applies here as well. The rest of this is faster cast rate. Depending on how much faster cast rate you have elsewhere, and depending on if you're going for the 105 or 200 breakpoint, you may want to use plus skill rings. Plus skill ring with 10 FCR would also be insane. Obviously, though, this is a really solid 20 FCR ring though here. We got a very solid 10 FCR ring with sustain. Mana per kill and life per kill are your best sources of sustain. I don't actually have as many of that, as much of that as I might want to. If you don't want to use any potions at all, though, you know, you can use like Silkweeds with life per kill corruption. You get life per kill elsewhere. You can use the Grandfather, like I said. If you get the 20 FCR Grandfather, you get sockets in it. Use Sur Runes for life per kill. Get some mana per kill as well, and then you'll pretty much never have to use potions. I didn't focus so much on sustain. I was more interested in making sure I had a lot of magic find in the case of these boots, which is a bountiful craft, which is kind of cool. And just made sure I had stacked res, magic find. My mana sustain is actually pretty solid. I definitely do have to use some health potions, and you'd have to use juice anyway sometimes, but at any rate, most of the time it'll be pretty good. So an Arachnid's Mesh just gives you the skill. It's the only way to get the skill on this build. Faster cast rate. I think it's probably going to be your best option almost all the time. And I got one with physical damage reduction, which is really nice. Of course, we have one with MF here as well. If you want to counter negative faster cast rate on this build, one really good way to do that is with Suicide Branch, so that you can have even more cast rate, so a map with negative cast rate won't put you down to the next frame like 63. It also helps to counter Decrepify in maps that have Decrepify as well. So really good stuff in general. As you can see, we have a lot of very good swap outs. I can swap out for more MF, and in general, there's also other good jewelry choices as well that we've had or used recently in the past. And very good stuff in general. And of course, this we can swap out if we want more MF and don't really care as much about damage. This is definitely a swap out that I like to do if I just want to max out my magic find, even on this main build. If you're doing Travincal, of course, you're going to want as much MF as possible. And one thing to note is that any MF or gold find on the Mercenary, if he is the one that finishes off the monster and does deals the last hit, the killing blow, his MF or gold find will stack on top of yours. So your MF will count and his MF will count, which is one reason why I had him wearing gold wrap as well when we were doing that as well, because it's got attack speed and it's got magic find. And so all that stuff in general is pretty solid. Heck, he even has magic find on this right now. A lot of this gear I do plan on converting into a Warcry barb. So I'm sorry, not Warcry. I'm actually going to convert this build into a Whirlwind barb as well. You might have an idea as to what weapon we're going to use, because we already have that on the Mercenary. That weapon is definitely not needed. You can have something with less sockets. You could have it on ethereal, as long as you're hitting a really high attack speed breakpoint, at least 75. 142, of course, I think is where the real fun is at. But indeed. And of course, one thing I forgot to mention was that Grim Ward, just one point into that, can make your Mercenary a lot stronger for killing those bosses. I may have mentioned that, actually, when it comes to gunning down those bosses and absolutely shredding them with no problem whatsoever. Alright, so that was a lot we went over for sure. Definitely went over a lot of gear stuff in general. Of course, skillers, Torch, Annie, Res, MF, Life, faster hit recovery in some cases might be very useful. I definitely recommend if there's negative hit recovery to at least not go negative on the map, so make sure you have enough not to be negative. Otherwise, that can definitely be a problem in maps to some degree, and you'll definitely feel that one. Yeah, negative hit recovery does not feel good, so yeah, make sure you can at least counter that at the very least. Alright, and so that's pretty much it for going over all of the specifics. That's a lot to definitely take in, but I hope you guys learned a lot more about the Warcry Barbarian and how it operates. So we're going to be playing 105 FCR hardcore version of this build, where we have really high DR, and we have a decent amount of plus skills. So we're going to demo him in various maps here, so to show you guys what he's really, truly capable of. And of course, I think actually, yeah, we might decide to do a, let's see, which one would be good for this, or at least halfway decent. Yeah, you know, that could do it. Yeah, we'll do like a, we'll do a fortification demo on it. That could be kind of interesting. Yeah, so this is the Orb of Fortification, a Season 6 demoing thing here as well. But at any rate, we're going to start with a Tier 1 map. This is one of his best Tier 1 maps, which is why we're going to do it. One thing to note about this build is because he is Physical Nova, and Physical Nova is best Nova. It's nothing better than a Physical Nova Barb. One thing to note is that the Physical Nova Barb has very few weaknesses. Even in immune to physical monster maps, he can still kill almost all of the monsters, except for like a Stone Skin Elite. That is also physical immune. And so, even in some of his worst maps, he can still clear them pretty effectively. You can't really say the same for most other builds in the game. This is because he's physical damage, but not only is he physical damage, but his battle cry is insanely high level. Because it's just a synergy for his main skill, so his negative physical res is insanely high there. He has more negative physical res with a very high level amplify damage. And if you used Brimstone Rain, or one glove option I forgot to mention was Soul Drainers, which has negative enemy physical res as well. And so negative physical res there, or perhaps on Brimstone Rain, would also give you an insane amount of negative physical res, and you could really just crush any monster with that whatsoever with this build. This build's always been like this. What's interesting is this build is actually nerfed in Season 6. So what you're about to see here is a nerfed Warcry Barb, but ironically it is still insanely strong, and it has no weaknesses whatsoever. But of course, before we actually go into the maps, let's just show you guys what he can do in a couple of LOD content areas. Now, this is not a more budget version, you know. We described all it really takes to do Trav on a budget to some good extent here. But the truth is, once this build gets to maximum power, Trav gets absolutely flatlined. And of course, if you have Find Item, which you should if you're a Trav Barb, you should have really high level, maybe 55 to 60 with the help of Find Potion as a synergy. You should just hork all these up and bam. So as you can see, insanely high damage, and that's not even the highest damage we can go. We can definitely get that 20 of Sierra Grandfather, like I said. We're actually using Geeds right now, just to show you, because we're about to demo a Tier 1 map, and we're demoing LOD areas. But yeah. It's really crazy stuff just in general. But yeah, the damage is nutty. At any rate, we'll also do Chaos as well. We'll also do Bailwebs. So this is how it works. You just teleport on Enigma, teleport in the middle, Warcry. Battle Cry before Warcry if you want maximum damage. Sometimes you don't really feel like you need that. And yes, he's very loud. There is a way to disable the sound file if you don't want the sound file on this character. So do keep that in mind. You just remove the sound file. This really annoys you, the crap out of you. It doesn't really annoy me too much, but you know, you can just tune it out, listen to something else if you want. But at any rate, it's pretty solid stuff. As you notice that you don't only have to rely on the Enigma teleport, you also rely on the leap. So you just get right in there on the Stace, and, well, you can't really do much too. As you can tell, our tankiness is definitely overkill for LOD content. This build is meant to absolutely just slam Tier 3 maps. It's meant to tank them up and destroy them. This guy's definitely a heavy hitter. Sending in the tanks, man. Definitely. The monster's getting destroyed. As you can see, though, Chaos gets flattened with no problem. One of the best LOD farms, of course, besides Travincal. Travincal, by far, though, is his best LOD farm, even with very low levels of gear. As I've described earlier, that's how I did it solo self-found without even any gear. Wow. Not bad. Low Holy Bolt, Hand of Blessed Light. Very nice. We'll just put that in there for now. And then we'll also kill Bale and Bale Waves real quick. Now the reason why I want to demo Bale is because now we don't have to fear souls because our light res is so stacked, and so is our cold res and our fire res. So even if they have a chance, they're not really going to be able to kill us. Just really the goal here. Don't have to fear conviction at all. One thing to note here is we can also use the Oak Sage charges from the Hodo, and we can bind that to a key as well. I do recommend having Leap on the other key though, so that you can just seamlessly transition into using Battle Cry and then War Cry, or just War Cry, depending on how much HP the monsters have. The monsters are very tanky. Oh wow. Dolls are still insane. Dang, okay. One thing to note is that our Mercenary dying is a very rare event. This is one reason, of course, I don't do doll maps, because you sit directly on top of the monsters. So it's very inconvenient. You're gonna have to move every time the dolls are there, so that's not really the best type of a map to do, I'd say, on this character, but as you can see, the dolls are totally capable of shredding the Mercenaries still. Dolls are nasty. So one reason I want to demo this is because of how funny it is to watch him just sit on top of the Baileys and just flatten them. So it's actually really cool. And then I can show you that his weakness indeed is boss killing, but the Mercenary doesn't make it as bad as you might think. And of course, with the Mercenary being able to do a lot of damage as well, it's actually not very bad. So, good stuff. Very, very good stuff indeed. Yeah, we're dying. Unfortunately, my stream has given me a lot of practice making character sounds. As you can see, our damage is just out of control. And, you know, this is definitely an exercise in how tanky we are here. On hardcore, I can just let them spawn directly on top of me and kill them. Yeah, there you have it. Definitely, definitely doesn't take much. So he's insanely safe, insanely powerful. Max Takaruni. This character's smashing. And as you can see, with a combination of both Battle Cry and Amp, Bale doesn't have a lot of physical res. He's even dying pretty fast between myself and the Mercenary. Merc has some crushing blow too, but also is very good for helping him kill bosses. And there you have it. There's a dead Bale. Very good LOD content, right? But this character is definitely made for bigger and better things. You definitely don't need anything as geared out as this monster for LOD content, not even close. Heck, even Double Spirit will do the job when it helps you get your plus skills up and helps you do some damage, at least to the council members, while the Mercenary does most of it. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to go into some map demos, and this is a tier 1 map. This tier 1 map is very effective. It's very wide open, which really takes advantage of his strengths. But we're going to show you, of course, how mapping looks on this character. Ow. So yeah, some monsters will still do a decent amount of damage to you. As you can see, you jump directly into the middle of them. And unlike some characters, you don't have summons. All you have is your Mercenary to protect you, which is why I really like the shield approach, especially on hardcore. But on softcore, if you have enough LPK and MPK, just like a Nova Sorc, it plays a lot like a Nova Sorc, and it can sustain a lot like a Nova Sorc. Of course, in this case, I decided to focus more on just pure defensive power instead of sustain, and high MF, and high plus skills. Right now, we don't actually have our 50% DR, we have 46. It's because we don't have the other Iraq on currently with the DR. As you can see, he boosts through this map insanely fast. Consider Phlegethon as best tier 1, but once again, I do almost any map. I've done virtually every tier 1 with him effectively. Even Bastion Keep, which has physical immunes, is no problem for this build. Once you get to the tier 2 and tier 3 physical immune maps, however, it starts to become noticeably more difficult, and that's when you probably want to stop even attempting to do them. But he's pretty insane, and as you can see, he's basically like a tankier version of a Nova Sorc in a lot of the ways that he plays. Even a regular Lightning Nova Sorc can use Static Field before casting Nova, and this character, of course, can use Battle Cry before casting Warcry. So in a lot of the ways, so you notice I cast Battle Cry, and on top of the amp, notice how I don't need the amp sometimes. The Battle Cry ensures that no matter what, even if the amp doesn't proc, I'm able to do a ton of damage. If the amp does proc, they usually die in like one shot. Like that right there. Of course, keep in mind though, this is 8.3k Warcry at the moment. We can get up to 8.6 of the gear that I have available. It's level 50 Warcry. However, you can get even higher than that. It's definitely possible. Alright, that's Soul Drainer. Nice, a Mercenary Soul Drainer. Not a bad item there, honestly. A Lemon. Laying of Hands is good because my Merc gets more attack speed, it also gets damage to demons, so that's kind of cool. I should just show you how powerful my Mercenary is as well on this build. So, Mercenary is kind of nuts. He can just shred the map too as well. But that's because his gear is absolutely crazy. But this build is very simple. Notice that you can track your teleport charges down there. It says I have 3 right now. Once you start to get low, you can definitely rely more on Leap. Leap is not quite as fast or effective because the Mercenary won't teleport with you. Notice the Mercenary stays back over there. That's why we want to get right on top of them and crush the monsters. Make sure to watch your buff timers. But as you can see, this map is getting absolutely slammed. Pick up the Hell Rune if I want, but I'm not going to. At least not for this. Yeah, as you can see, it's really fast when you just build like this. You can also use Find Item on the elites within the maps if you want, which might even be a better approach for Fortified because there's not as many monsters. But it's also just a really good approach to have a ton of damage. And I would actually say this is probably better. If you're doing Travincal, Council Member Horking is just so effective. Maybe it won't be in future seasons, you never know. Maybe they'll get sick of Trav being the ultimate meta for barb farming in the beginning. But if they don't, Trav will always be good. That being said, It might be hard for barbs to farm themselves up compared to other classes if Trav isn't as strong as it is now, because it's pretty much the only reliable area that a barb can utilize. Especially now that they've nerfed double throw and a couple other abilities. Whirlwind is also insane though, which hopefully we can also make a guide video for Whirlwind as well, on hardcore nonetheless. Show you guys how that also works. But as you can see, it's not like we're lacking for damage, so even though in softcore you can get more damage easier without necessarily worrying about ever dying, it's not like you necessarily need so much more damage. It just does so much damage to begin with. Once again, this is synergy nerf to Warcry, so the Howl and Battlecry synergies went down from 18 to 15%. Doesn't feel very nerfed, honestly. Sometimes when something feels nerfed, you know, it doesn't feel good anymore. This is definitely not the case. Completely false on that front. So we went through all the way through this map, but as you can see, you know, he's a gangbusters, he's Rambo, he pretty much just jumps into stuff and kills it. It feels really fun to just go right in the middle of the monsters, even on hardcore, smash them with no difficulty. Now I could put down Grimward there for the boss, and now the Merc is attacking at crazy speeds. And he has 9,500 damage per hit, on the maximum at least, and absolutely smashed that map. You can time that yourself, but as you can see, under 10-minute maps are very easy for this character to do, which is why he's ranked so highly. Of course, with even more damage on softcore, you can see that once he's competing with the top builds with the top amounts of damage, he's totally capable of doing so with even more plus skills than 50 or near 50 and otherwise. Alright, so for some other maps, let's go show off some other maps as well. This build is definitely one of the strongest builds I've ever shown off in terms of a showcase, so this is very good stuff. Alright, so now we have some other maps that we can show off here as well. Let's go show off our... Alright, yeah, let's go show off Royal Crypts. This is a tier 2, so we're going up. I consider this one of his better tier 2s. It used to have physical immunes, it no longer does. My filter, people always ask about my filter. My filter is the ADEV DH1 in the launcher. My filter will always show you the immunities on the maps, and of course will show you all of the relevant bases for pretty much anything you'd ever want to make, and it's really clean looking as well. Check out ADEV DH filter. You can also pull it up with exclamation filter in my Twitch. Dark Humility. Alright. So yeah, as you can see, yeah, that battle cry is doing work, as you can see. Once we go up to a tier 2 map, you can really see how, even with a pretty solid amount of damage, you can definitely make more use of this. I'm actually going to still use the MF rack here, but I'm actually going to swap out for more damage now that we're in a tier 2. I just want as much damage as possible. So physical Nova is best Nova. Come on, I can kill him. Yeah, there we go. It's gotta get both Battle Cry and Amp on some monsters. Some Stone Skin monsters need that treatment. But in a physical immune monster map, if they have Stone Skin, you won't be able to kill them even with both, unfortunately. This one, they aren't physical immune, they just have high physical res, so... Which is why we're boosting our damage for this map as well. But as you can see, it's tier 2 map getting absolutely smushed. I ran out of Enigma charges there and didn't realize it. Definitely recommend keeping track of that for sure. Look at how we just jump in it here. All that amp and Fanat, no cares in the world, even on hardcore. As this is a hardcore barb, it's always cool to emphasize just like how safe this character is just in general, and how to utilize it effectively. I'll pick up some maps, of course. Okay. There's definitely some really crazy auras going on over here. Look at that. Still not very dangerous, as you can see. You know, might lose like 1,000 life from something like dual aura and whatnot, but not the end of the world. Yeah, you just gotta sometimes keep track of your teleport charges. Make sure you use leap here and there. It's definitely, you know, leap into some of the easier packs to kill so that you don't need the Mercenary. Take advantage of that. But I think you guys get the idea on this map for sure. Very, 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 very powerful stuff. Just going through the maps. No problems. Archers, not too dangerous. Once again though, if you don't go a shield build, you might have to worry about taking a lot of damage from those a lot more. So, is definitely possibly the case. Okay. Next up for a demo, show you guys Sewers. Sewers is a really good map. So this is, in my opinion, one of his best tier 3s that isn't cows. I can show you guys how good he is in there. So in general, you guys can see just what you're getting into. I always like to do all these demos so, you know, anyone that's interested in playing this character can see what they can achieve with it. Or at least a strong degree of what they can achieve, because you can always get more damage. And on softcore, there's even more crazy items available. Of course, this character's pretty decked out for hardcore, honestly. But Executioner's Justice, wow. Very rare item there. Very class 87 unique. Alright. So yeah, as you can see, easy mode. Mercenary will shred bosses no matter what. Put up the Grimward. So even if I'm alone without my Merc, I still tank pretty effectively, as you can see there. Very good stuff. We have the Oak Sage out. Be sure to battle command before you battle orders and shouts so that you get the most out of them. That's just a general barb thing though, in case you don't know how the barbs work. My shout's only level 1, but because I have so many plus skills in the Warcry, I have a huge amount of defense. Combined with the Defiance Aura from the Mercenary, it's 16,000 defense as well. Which means the monsters don't hit me all that often. I mean, they do, but they also don't. We're pretty much as tanky as any old paladin, honestly, except we have way more life. It's like the ultimate jump into the monsters character on hardcore, and it's just really, really good to kill. Even if you're not using a shield, you can get like 4,000 to 4,500 HP, maybe more. And that can make up for the lack of having a shield, but archers can be ridiculous in tier 3 maps, and there's a lot of situations where that can still be scary. So once again, if you don't wear a shield on hardcore, probably want to go curse immune, or you might have a lot of close calls. And I've definitely confirmed from other people who have done this build using that approach, there will be close calls for sure. You don't do that at the very least, or it might just straight up kill you. Especially in group mapping. So if you want to take him group mapping and you want to do or hard content, it's there. That was the boss. So as you can see, even though he's not the best boss killer, it's not hard for him to kill them, especially with how tanky it is. Being able to just jump on top of the boss fearlessly actually saves a lot of time. So he really doesn't have any true blue weaknesses when it comes to mapping. And like I said, even for Uber Ancients, you could just use the Mercenary if you wanted to. So it's good stuff. Very, very good stuff indeed. Level 96, her experience is going up very slowly. But with the speed of this tier 3 map here, you can see it's not that bad at all. So, I think with the boss kill and whatnot, I think you guys definitely get the idea of this map. I definitely like this map a lot for him though, because he doesn't have a lot of physical res, and it's really easy for him to traverse it, especially with having both leap and teleport. Alright. Oh, nice. There's a couple of nice filler items there. Is that a perfect ED executioners? Does appear to be the case, yes. And a molecule. Rip. Alright, well that's no good. That's okay. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we are going to do cows, and any Nova character is notoriously good at cows. But this one, with as tanky as he is, it just feels like almost as natural as anything possibly could. Now, if you were afraid of taking more damage, you could put back on your DR and you could get your 50 DR back. But I think cows are fine, so I'm gonna leave on my MF belt for now. You can see though here, cows are no problem. Just jump into them, battle cry, war cry. That's it. Battle cry, transition to war cry. Cows get absolutely smushed. It's like Frogger, but you're the car. Frogger gets to be the car. Car, or whatever, he gets to squash him. And this is a massive density cow, so as you can see, yeah, it's pretty good. I think a lot of people always thought Warcry was super solid for Travincal, but I think a lot of people wondered, you know, is he actually good at mapping? The answer is a resounding yes, of course, with the right build. Who knows, maybe this video will actually raise the price of Enigma and hence jaw runes a bit as people realize that certain builds with Enigma or otherwise become extremely good. And the Mercenary is just doing a lot of work. Okay. Wow, FED Warpike? Really? Huh. That's 5%. It's pretty good, actually. Yeah, once again, this is the ADEV DH loop filter, if you guys are curious on looking it up on the launcher. I am the primary developer of this loop filter now, so it's kind of cool. It is indeed from the ADEV original base loop filter. It's been modified quite a bit at this point, but hey, it's looking amazing. So +4 Shadow Killer. Can you really get wrong with one of those? No. Cows drop so many items, especially with this much density. I can't even keep up with them all. Yeah, you don't have to be bullied by this much density at all. More density, the better. In general, for this build, he handles high density extremely well, as does pretty much any Nova type build. A lot of Nova builds work the same, you know. MPK, LPK, both very good stats. Interesting. So this is we got the Horizon event. That's random. As you can see here, even with lower resist, my resistances are still insanely high. I even got like maximum negative max all res, which is why my res only cap out at 70. Luckily for us though, the cow map, that's not a very bad stat. Because there's just not a lot of elemental damage in cows. Notice though these ghosts here, this is a ghost map, and normally ghosts are a problem for a physical damage character as they're highly physical resistant. However, with a combination of Amp and Battlecry, they really don't do anything. It might slow you down a tiny bit. Just a little bit. But overall, not a lot can really slow this character down. I'd say one of his hardest maps is probably Tomb of Zoltan Kuhl. That's only because it's a tier 3 with physical immunes, and they're pretty difficult to kill. And even that one, he can do it, so... This isn't one of those builds where you feel like you might be pigeonholed into doing maybe 4 maps, maybe 6, maybe 8. No, you can just do them all if you want. Of course, in Season 6, you're not quite as pigeonholed as you used to be on any build, because there's just less immunes overall. However, doesn't mean that there still aren't builds that have more versatility like this one. Yeah, I could just go right in the middle, just fall asleep a bit. Monsters die all around me. Easy stuff. Get that massive, look at that Mercenary go. Yeah, if you get as much damage, attack speed, even some crushing blow, get some DS like that's on my Merc and everything, man, it really hits insanely hard. Deadly Strike there, yeah, it's just crazy damage. And you can see with this that if I had even more damage, like, you know, any amount of maximum life doesn't really matter as well. We're going to be showing that here momentarily. I actually didn't get the battle crowd on that one. Just too many items to pick up, man. Yeah, cows is a... Even if you only are picking up the charms, basically, and maybe a couple other things. Cows is pretty ridiculous. My goodness. I threw out a... Yeah, even if that's all we're doing. It's crazy, huh? Can even show off like Hiddesen's marketplace a bit here. Could take the opportunity given to us by Horizon. I want to see if like a really good item drops here. Watcher buffs. Did just run out of bow there. Yeah, that's immune to physical there, but as you can see with both Amp and Battle Cry, we break the immunity, and he does. It's never an ideal thing to get stone skin on those, but it doesn't matter. My god. Absolute obliteration. Would you believe it? We're pretty much almost done with this map already.
I can't carry anymore.
Well, you believe it. Surprising we haven't found a better item, actually. This is a really good map. Oh well. Easy come, easy go sometimes. Where'd that conviction or concentration where I come from? I don't know. There's still a few stragglers here and there. There aren't many builds that can go faster than this, even being this tanky. I would say Rabies can probably do this one faster though, but you know, there's quite a few. They're a decent number, you know, I put a decent number on my tier list there. Definitely faster, I'd say, on average, but not by a lot. With as tanky as he is, and honestly, this gear isn't insanely expensive compared to a lot of builds. Definitely something to note for this very strong build here. Look at this champion fire tower just getting melted. And they're really tanky too, so you could even jump on top of them. This is definitely a more difficult map to solo typically, but he's totally capable of it. Yeah, if I had a bit more life per kill, sustain a little bit better. 20 FCR grandfather, man. Difficult thing to kill. Or difficult thing to get, I should say. Very difficult. Alright. But yeah, I think you guys can probably get the idea from this now. That's the boss, but you know. He's not that bad. He just takes a little bit to kill. Definitely easy to do. Let's see here. Boss can be frustrating because you got like a stun, but besides that, you know, not too bad. Could just tank for a Mercenary so he didn't stun. So yeah, a lot of people, you know, he definitely, this character definitely gets stereotyped as being bad at boss killing, but you can make him insanely effective at it. Just utilize the Mercenary, Battle Cry, Grimward, and if you're as tanky as I am, you can just tank for him, and it's pretty easy to do. Same can go for Uber Ancients. Alright, at any rate, I think those are some pretty solid demos for those. Let's actually show what you can do in a Fortified map. So Fortification is the new Season 6 trait, and I bet a lot of you guys are wondering, well, Fortified maps are pretty tough. They're pretty dangerous, especially on hardcore, you know, can you do a Fortified map? And the answer, of course, is that there really isn't much a Warcry Barb can't handle. And that is, of course, the answer for practically anything, so there you have it. So this is Fortified. As you can see, the density is taken down quite a few notches here. The amount of loot that drops just from a couple of monsters, though, is actually pretty insane in Fortified. Remember, this is double loot, double experience. But between Leap and Teleport, you have a lot of mobility, so you can make up for the lack of density and you can totally shred. Just like to emphasize once again, this is Fortified. So Fortified, double loot, double experience, but double monster health, 20% extra monster damage, and it's negative 50% density. Definitely watch some of the more dangerous things in Fortified maps because they do have more damage, but as you can see though, it's no problem. Monsters have a lot of health. You also get double loot. But as you can see though, this character kind of thrives on density to some extent, so it's arguable whether this is even a good thing to do on this character. You can definitely make the argument that it's not. I would definitely say characters like Whirlwind definitely thrive on density. Like, I personally don't like the idea of doing Fortified on Whirlwind. I think you're just losing out on a lot of kills. And you're also losing out on your continual leech as you get from just like plowing through an endless sea of monsters. And Fortified maps definitely take away that endless sea of monsters. So this is really good for builds though, like Zeal and whatnot that have limited AoE that, you know, can't do as well. This character is kind of an in-between, so it has not insane AoE, but it's got good AoE, so it can do them, it cannot do them. I don't know, Warcry can do everything. Warcry can truly do everything. So one thing I forgot to do for Fortified was I actually probably want to use my TR rack. That might be the smart move. Yeah, you want to make sure you're mitigating as much damage as possible, especially on hardcore in here, which I'm sure the comments below might ding me on if they don't see me do. They're like, you're not even using your max TR. That's so dangerous, Dark Humility. It's a Fortified map. It's like, yeah, no. Gotta say, those shadows really hurt in Fortified maps. In Fortified maps, you can really truly make use, though, of both your Battle Cry and your Amp, though. Because in a lot of cases, you kill the monsters with just like one or the other in a lot of the other maps, even in Tier 3s in a lot of cases. So it's really nice to see, and not being the case. But yeah. Yeah, notice that if I don't get the battle cry on them and then I don't get the amp on them, they're pretty tanky. These monsters are hard to kill, but if I do get both on them, it's pretty much almost the same speed as a regular map, at least in terms of monster kill speed. So I think fortified maps are in a pretty good place balance-wise in terms of PD2, but I do wonder if maybe they could be buffed it slightly, just a little bit. They're definitely cautious, I'd say, in their first iteration. Maybe you don't have to reduce the density by half, you know. Maybe the extra damage is enough to warrant, you know. And the extra HP is enough to warrant maybe only reducing it by, like, I don't know, 40%. But they're very close, I'd say, balance-wise, so that's good. But anyway, I think you guys can get the idea here. Fortified map. We are definitely tanky, we're definitely powerful. Firewall is not a good Ormus at all. Fortified bosses are a bit insane though. Definitely gonna want to watch the damage on them. Their health value too is just crazy. Mercenary is getting smashed. Boss is doing an unreal amount of damage, and he killed the Mercenary. But yeah. At any rate, that is one of the things that's a little bit tougher, but as you can see though, you can also smash fortified maps as well if you'd prefer lower density. And fully utilizing the amount of damage you can really put out in a smaller amount of area. So, of course, I'd recommend though making sure you're pretty geared out, especially on hardcore, before messing with these. So once again, the monsters do a really high amount of damage. In some sense though, this could be better for something like a non-shield build though, because there's just simply less monsters. It might be better to take advantage of this, doing this as well, so that is something else that is definitely worth mentioning here. You might notice that the monsters are actually putting me into hit recovery in a couple of cases here. Since the map is negative hit recovery, yeah. Sometimes I'm getting hit, just not recovering very quickly. Yeah, that's normal in this case. It's definitely not bad though. Definitely not bad. Alright. Well, that's pretty much it. Did everything we should. Demoed everything. So, without further ado, that is it. That is the Warcry Barbarian guide. I talked about a lot of things. We definitely talked about a lot of things in general. Hope you guys learned a lot about this S-tier mapping build. Physical Nova is best Nova, the tankiest Nova, and also capable of dealing with immunes, possibly the best as well. He really can do everything. He smashes maps. Tier 1s, Tier 2s, and regular Tier 3s stand no chance, and Fortified can also get crushed to a pretty large degree without too much difficulty. Definitely worth trying both approaches on this character depending on your setup. Remember, it's negative physical res, plus skills, and faster cast rate that you're going to want. This is a 105 max block, max DR build with 50 skills. You can, of course, get closer to 55 skills with even better items. You can even get a +1 Annie. There's a lot of things you can definitely do and make him hit even harder. This build can become even more insane. Mercenary is almost as maxed out as you can be though, which is kind of cool. So you can see what a really strong, tanky, high damage high DPS Mercenary really looks like. And then, of course, so many awesome approaches on this character. Definitely one of my favorite approaches of this season. Yeah, he was nerfed, but strangely enough, he was even stronger than this last season, which is pretty crazy to think considering how strong he is this season. So I hope you guys are inspired to try this out. Even from the beginning, he crushes Trav with no difficulty whatsoever. And he can provide all of the safety and power to his Mercenary with Battlecry. At any rate, let me know what you guys thought about this guide below. And let me know, of course, in the comments below what you guys thought and whatnot. Let me know your thoughts and whether or not it helped you guys out, and whether or not you got inspired to make this yourself, or whether or not you've already made one, and what approach you decided to go with, as I described many in this video. Of course, I'm going to be putting timestamps below as well. Make sure you guys have chapters so you guys can check the various sections of this video. Remember, we have so many other PD2 guides that are still relevant. As long as it's a Season 2 guide at the very least, it still has a lot of relevance. The builds might be slightly weaker or slightly stronger than they were before, but in general, the builds are still, and the build options are mostly the same for practically every build guide for PD2, even from previous seasons. So make sure to check out our now pretty sizable library of builds on PD2. Of course, you can check out our D2R build guides as well on here as well, and of course on Maxwell, where we have the most comprehensive and most definitive info on D2R there is available. Of course, in the age of Diablo hype, we push forward, and we will push forward with this hardcore 99 grind. Hopefully we get there. We may be transitioning to Whirlwind extremely soon as well, to show off how that can also work, and that is also an insanely strong, it is the other insanely strong build that a Barbarian has available, I would argue. At any rate, awesome stuff, guys. Awesome stuff. You can always catch me at twitch.tv/Dark Humility, and Dark Humility over and out. See you guys for the next installment. Let's get it.